Is it possible that we can create a new age of genius? Are there simple things that a person could do or know that would literally awaken the genius inside their own brain, their own body? Can you awaken genius in your kids? Or do you have to be born this way? And if there is a way to open a new level of genius, could we change the planet with it? These are the questions that Bill McKenna and I will be asking in today's episode. Welcome, Bill McKenna. Hi, I'm Liz Larson.
And I'm Bill McKenna. We're the hosts of the New Life Perspectives radio show.
We're also the creators of the Cognomovement system, where we help you rewire your nervous system so you can rewire your reality.
Join us each week for great conversations, amazing guests, and cutting-edge information on health, consciousness, and the keys to transformation.
All right. Well, first of all, I would give this one a hard no in the past. Genius was born. You know, Elon was born. Michelangelo was born. Leonardo da Vinci was born. So I didn't really think that there was any way, shape, or form that, you could do a little bit, study hard. Go to school. That's about the answer to that. But I think even with those guys, that they just had something special about them. And it wasn't available to us mere mortals.
Right? It seems like that. You seem like, how could one human have so much talent?
Yeah.
How could they be so gifted? Leonardo da Vinci was not only gifted in art, extraordinary art, but science, math, engineering, obviously geometry, and really some spirituality if you know where to look and what he did. And it seems really unfair that one human could have all of that, right? And if you look at the great geniuses over time, many of them have that. They excel in many, many areas where other people may not have even one of those. So of course we think, people seem to be born with their intellect intact, and that's what you have the rest of your life. But we know for sure that's not true from things like people who've had head injuries and become savants.
Mm-hmm.
I was watching a YouTuber today who said he had an injury in his ear. It injured the part of his brain near his ear. And he's deaf in one ear. But after that, he automatically knew how to play the piano. Like, what in the heck could that be about? Or the guy who was in a bar fight. And the guy who was in a bar fight, this one's so funny. We've talked about him before. But he said he was dumb. Like, he was not a smart person. And after this massive head injury, he became one of the world's top mathematicians. He just knew math. It was like his eyes could see something that they couldn't see before. And I think that's a key to what we're going to be talking about today. The ability to take in information that you couldn't before. And then the converse of that, I think, is really unlocking information that might be stored in our genes for thousands of years. There's an author named Taylor Caldwell, and she wrote stories on many, many topics. One of them had to do with the time of Jesus. Another one had to do with a surgeon. And she said she never researched any of her books. She just knew this very accurate information. Well, she didn't believe in reincarnation. But her theory was genetic memory. That the memory of every human we've ever been related to is in our DNA. Well, I think that's a pretty cool theory. But another theory would be, is that every bit of information that ever existed on the planet is available in the grid, in the field around us. So then the question becomes, well, how do we tap into it?
Yeah. That is very, very interesting. You know, there's all kinds of research into DNA as a method to store data now. Also, water as a method to store data. We've been utilizing quartz crystals for a long time to store data, but there's all these other methods that seem to be able to store even more data than quartz. So yeah, it kind of makes sense. And we know that it actually is stored from the work of Dr. Diaz at UCSD and the mice experiments. It's kind of what I would call the not a really great thing that he, on one hand, that he did because he tortured mice, but on the other hand, there's some information that came out of it where basically what he did was he put these mice in a cage, and then he electrified the bottom of the cage where if he pushed a button they would get shocked. But before he pushed the button, he had this fruity chemical smell, and he would wave it over the box, and then he would shock the mice. And it was like, you know, he kept doing this, traumatizing these mice. Fruity smell, shock, fruity smell, shock. And then he took the sperm and egg out of them and implanted it into other mice that had never met the first batch. And when they gave birth and grew up, he waved over the fruity smell over the box they were in, and the mice went nuts.
Yeah.
Proving that there is storage in your friend that you talked about, where it was genetically stored information from the past. It is actually scientifically true.
Well, yeah, I mean, that is scientific conditioning. And we know that talents get passed down, talents like music, where a voice makes sense because that's a structural thing. But playing an instrument, being musical, most people think is a learned thing. Except for that, if you have a lot of musicians in your family, you're likely to be a musician. It's stored information. The same with art. So in my family, I come from a long line of artists on both sides. I could just draw stuff. Leah, my daughter, can just draw stuff. My son, the same thing. All of a sudden emerges this artistic talent, right? Not learned, not even seen. In my house, my dad wasn't an artist, or neither was my mom, but my uncles and my grandfather had been on two different sides. I didn't see it growing up. I didn't know them, but it naturally emerged. So we know for sure we store information in our genes, and our brain is able to utilize those, right? But everybody's out there like, well, what if I didn't get any talents passed down? How do I tap into my genius? Well, it turns out that it's really about your brain having enough connectivity, all of the parts of the brain being able to access and talk to each other. And if you've been watching our channel for a while or listening, you know that we're always talking about being able to access more of the brain. But genius may not just be more of the brain, but more of the parts of the brain communicating, creating this level of being able to see and understand more. And it may even be that you're seeing and understanding more of reality, right?
Yeah, that is very much a real thing. But you know, as we started this out, you know, that surely didn't seem to be real to me. You know, reality is reality, and I see it clearly. You know, I'm clear. I know this is this and that's that, and you know, I know the facts. You know, but it's really shocking to have a new reality uncovered. And when that hyperconnectivity, all the parts of the brain start to work together and share information, the experience is surreal. It is like an awakening when your brain starts all functioning. What doesn't make sense starts to make sense, and things become obvious, like as obvious as, I turn on the water and fill up a glass of water. It's like, obviously, that's what's going to happen. However, there are things that people have never thought about before, and they're problem solving. Just like, oh, it's obvious. It's kind of like Elon. He's like constantly like, oh, yeah, just do this. Yeah, that'll work. Just like, oh my gosh, nobody thinks of these things.
Yeah. And in all of the areas of our lives that he has had an influence, whether you like him or don't, he's created things that are impacting us and affecting us today. Tesla is the fastest growing car company on the planet. The most sold cars, I think, for quite a few years, maybe not this year, but quite a few years before that. Starlink is one of those things that is really changing the lives of people where internet was not available.
Yeah.
And now this massive amount of information. He has led the race in the United States, the space race for us. We didn't really have much of a space program without him, and now we do again. I mean, it's just on and on and on. And you think, how does a person have that many ideas? And how does he even have that much time in a day?
Or the ability to execute. You can have ideas and not have the energy to execute. In execution means raising money. It means organizing teams. It means, negotiating, contractual, obligating, solving the myriad of different problems that go into creating any product. And here he is, Boring Company, the Neuralink, Tesla, robots, space.
Boxable houses now.
Yeah, boxable house. Just bing, 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 like, and God only knows what'll be next week.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. All right, you guys. Well, let's take our first break. And if you're already thinking that you might want some of this new age of genius, and that that Bill and I are going to give you an answer to it, you're right. It is the Cognomovement Essentials program. It's actually our most basic program. It's very easy to do. And within 1 or 2 sessions, you can start to unlock genius. So visit us at cognomovement.com and click on the Essentials program and get started today. Now let's hear from the good folks at the UK Health Radio. We're back and we're talking about whether or not we can create a new age of genius. And we've talked about all the kinds of geniuses there are and how there might be a way to access it. But let's talk about what's blocking it. And really, basically what it is that the brain combined with the body, the limbic system, it keeps you distracted. So what is that about? It's fight or flight. That's one way. It keeps you distracted from seeing the rest of every other possibility that there is. That's one thing. Going along with that, a second thing is often head injury. We talked about how head injury can turn on savantism, but most of the time head injury prevents the brain from talking to those parts that are injured, sort of knocks things offline. And it also turns out that when you're distracted by fight or flight, by problems in life, there is a level of consciousness or awareness that is also inaccessible. So let's first talk about the distraction of the limbic system and how it keeps that hyperconnectivity of the brain really minimized.
Okay. Well, this one is something that the masses of humanity suffer with. And that is, and I would encourage everyone to just, think about this in context of their own ordinary day. Most people are in survival, either physically or financially. I'm on the treadmill of how do I pay this month's bills? Or maybe there's somebody who's got a health problem in your life and you're running from doctor to doctor or whatever it might be to help them or yourself. So this fight or flight basically limits all of your capacities down to some basic functions. And when you're in fear, one of the interesting things about fear is in your brain, it will shut down the other broader connections. And we only have what I would call limited possibilities. Well, I know that I could go out and get this job, and this job, and, I could, try to make it work. But when we are in a position like that, there's no capacity to start thinking about, some big project. Like, what? I think I want to bring water from Colorado to California. And if I created a pipe, I think I could bore through, this mountain. I could do it this way. And I could funnel all this water and, it would be fresh water. It's spring water. And there's actually more than everything needs. And, then I'm going to grow crops. And, you're not going to, it's like, not only wouldn't you think about it, but the energy, to go out and make the contacts and put it all together. What happens, though, is as the truth gets revealed through doing these neurological exercises, literally physically exercising your brain. And how do you exercise your brain? I know you're like, physically exercise your brain. What do you mean? Do math problems? No. Read more? No. Maybe you can do those on the side, but what we're talking about is physical exercises that will process the fear. So your spine, your eyes, they're literally one with the brain. And what happens here is that fear is felt in the body of survival. And by doing certain exercises with the eyes and the spinal cord, the whole neurological systems, your ears, even your tongue, you can actually cause different parts of the brain to start to come online. The fear dissipates. And once that happens, you can imagine more parts of the brain come online and start connecting. And this starts to graduate bit by bit by bit. The fear, the anger, the shame, the guilt, the grief, humiliation, anger, resentment, blame, all these things start to all go away, and making room for more neurological connections.
Well, let's tell a real life story, Bill. Let's tell on you. You said you didn't believe this was real. You read the book of Dr. David Hawkins, and he was talking about at a certain level, genius level, things start to happen. And you called straight up BS, right?
Yeah.
So tell about what your history was and what the main emotion was that was kind of keeping your brain distracted. And then what happened?
Well, the first thing here is that, Dr. David Hawkins, he had created a chart that and it started off with the lower levels of consciousness or understanding that you were kind of operating in shame and humiliation, and then the next level up was guilt and grief and anger and resentment and so on and so forth, and it kept going up and up and up. There was courage, and then willingness and acceptance or forgiveness. And it went through. Above that level, there was this genius that started to come about. After genius was love and unconditional love and bliss and enlightenment. And I read so many books that Dr. David Hawkins had published. I mean, it was enough that they were up to chest high. That's how much he published. And when I read those books, I thought to myself, I really want to be up in that, area of unconditional love, and with it, there's a blissful feeling. And I had been through a process of forgiving. That's kind of where it all started. And I was trying to be in that love space. And anyway, I could never quite get there. I was always bumping up. The level of genius is the level of 400. And I was constantly right about 390. And I was like, damn, how do I do it? How do I do it? How do I get there? I'm like, I'm really trying. I'm trying to feel it, but I can't seem to buoy myself up above 390. And finally, it was only like 2 sentences out of that many books, chest high books. There was like 2 sentences in one of the books that finally unlocked it. Maybe it was a paragraph, but it wasn't much. But I finally got in the book. He said, your thing that keeps you from genius is your perception or your perspective. I had forgiven people, but I still had a perspective that this person is right and that person is wrong. This person's bad, that person's good. I'm not resenting them, but I'm still like, you're an a-hole. You're all right, and he said that in order to transcend, you're going to need to let go of your positionality. And I was like, oh, well, that resonated. I had a lot of positions on a lot of things. So I was like, I can do that. That's easy, So I just started letting go, and anybody I would think, about any group of people or any individuals, whether it was, I don't like that fashion choice at all, like that's a bad fashion choice. Oh, that it was a letting go. And I can still remember. I don't remember if it was the summer of 2012 or the summer of 2013. I can't remember what it was, but I just did it. And I didn't, and I just made it part of, my being. It's like, all y'all, you're all free. Nobody's wrong here. You just are different, and I'm able to look at your perspective, like, oh, that's how things are for you. And I can see that. I can see how that would be. So allowing myself to go into alternate perspectives, like getting into other people's bubbles and looking through their bubble. Well, I didn't expect it. And by the way, first things first, it was utter and total BS that you could access genius. Just not even in my thought. My thought was love. I knew that, hey, you know what? I can probably get there, if I can get it together. But I was driving, and all of a sudden, it was like one invention after the next started coming to me. I mean, I was, everywhere. If I look at a sidewalk, I was like, the people walking on that sidewalk, we could put a little electrodes, wire it so that it's on a little bit of a give. And every time a person walks on it, it'll produce electricity, because piezoelectric, when you press on piezoelectric substances, it'll produce a voltage. So everybody walking down the street or driving their car down the road, even a little bit, with all that weight, it's going to produce so much energy. I'm like, oh man, that's, wasted energy. Why don't we do that? Oh, hey, you know what? I think, also if we put that in a boot, you could put it in a boot. You could charge your phone with a battery. All you need is a wire and a little USB, and now you can charge an extra battery for your phone. Everybody needs one of those. Anyway, it was like, but it was not one thing. It was like 5 or 6 a day. I literally was speaking into my phone. It was like, it's like so many. And it was absolutely ridiculous. And the way, Elon, I've heard him talk, and Elon says, I don't think you want to be me. It sounds like it might be fun, but the hyperconnectivity of the brain, and when it starts coming out, you're like, oh my gosh, here's another one. And you're like, your energy of creation gets so splayed because you're like, oh, we could do this, we could do that. Oh my gosh, that's going to work. That's going to work. Oh my gosh, there's $1 billion idea. That one is, several.
It's kind of like all the ideas of your life start flowing in.
Yeah.
It's like there's a backup. They've been waiting to come in, and they couldn't until it opened. And what's interesting about your story is you actually did it the hard way. That was before Cognomovement.
Yeah.
It took you a while to get there, right?
Oh, yeah.
Now we're finding that sometimes after one Cognomovement session, because it's so expert at down-regulating the nervous system and getting the brain talking to itself, that will warn people, you might have a lot of great ideas. You better write them down, because that starts to happen right away. I have a different problem. I was born with that hyperconnectivity. I mean, my whole life is, what about this? And what about that? And what about the other thing? And the ability to see many things going on at once, extrapolate and pull them together. But my problem was frustration. The world moves too slow. And I'd be frustrated of the 1,000 ideas I had in one day, that I wasn't 2 years ahead on that project already, right? Or the 1,000 projects, right? Or, why didn't I think of that 2 years ago? I just would get locked in, I've got all the ideas, all this connectivity, but the frustration that built in my body, and that is that function of your limbic system. Frustration is a little bit of a form of fight or flight, but it can be really paralyzing. I'm actually what's called a highly proactive person. So I get a lot done, but I lived in frustration, and the most important things that needed to happen to bring forward couldn't, because I was living in frustration. And when you do that, you put a lot of roadblocks in front of that need to be done in front of the thing. You tend to not just go forward and do it. So in my case, that I did a lot of things. I got a lot of stuff done, but not the thing I needed to be focused on, not the thing that I needed to do. And that was the thing that Cognomovement brought to me, is that ability to recognize the natural way my body wants to work, my brain going way faster than reality. Turns into frustration. I'm like, oh, there you are, body. Thank you for that reminder. Then you can relax the tension out of the body with Cognomovement and let the brain do its thing. Let the flow start to happen. And for most of us, it's that flow state that we want. Everybody's had it 1 or 2 times in their life, right? And you're like, how do I get back there? How do I get back there? Well, it's utilizing sometimes that thing that your body does that warning signal, utilizing it as a reminder, oh, my body needs to relax so that my brain can do what it needs. And that is the thing that Cognomovement is so expert at. So guys, if you're hearing us talk about this and you've been listening to us for a while and you just haven't pulled the trigger, come to cognomovement.com and look for the Essentials program. That's the place to start. It's a place to get your nervous system out of fight or flight and start to bring your genius back online. Now, that is just the entry level. We have lots of other things all the way up to practitioner level. But Essentials is a really easy place to start. You can start today and start to bring your genius online. All right, let's hear from the good folks at the UK Health Radio Network. Okay, we're back and we were talking about how to bring the next level of genius onto the planet. And we were talking about how there are emotional issues. Bill was talking about anger. I was talking about frustration that really will shut down your genius. But another massive one is head injury. And Bill and I see this every day with our own clients, the clients of our practitioners around the world, where a bonk on the head, and it doesn't have to be major, can stop the way the brain learns. You get things that look like learning disabilities, even some things that look like autism, things that look like anger issues or authority oppositional disorder. All of those kinds of things really stunt learning, especially at school age, right? And kids are constantly bonking their head. What we didn't know until Cognomovement is how to clear that out by getting the brain talking to itself again. See, the brain will route around the place that is healing, just like a bruise. When you have a bruise, it's the body's reminder, don't touch that area. I mean, it's a physical outward reminder. This one's hurt. Let's take it easy. But the brain, we can't see that. Most people go right about their regular business, and kids especially. And so while that part of the brain is trying to grow and develop, all the signals are routed around it while it's trying to heal. Now you've got the brain learning in a new way. So this is one of those things that we see sometimes instantly, almost instantly. Sometimes it takes a few weeks. Their genius come online, their wonderful creativity. But more than that, the ability to execute, the ability to get out there and do it. I know you're working with somebody like that who really was halted and then was able to, get out there and start, a brand new project, something. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh my gosh! Well, there's so many. I mean, we've got a lot of them. But one of them, I'll tell a few stories. One of them had a head injury, and everything stopped. All aspects of life collapsed. A lot of people don't realize this. They go through a divorce or the business collapsed, and they never ever piece together like, could it be that I fell down and I hit my head, or got in a car accident? Would seem like no big deal. It's just like my brain, not, you're like, no, I didn't get a concussion because I didn't hit the window or didn't hit the steering wheel, but their brain sloshed around in their head real bad, which is a concussion.
Yeah, even a minor sports injury.
Or played football in the past. There's so many ways that you can get yourself a concussion or injure your brain. Or you found maybe you went out and partied a little too hard and blacked out. Mm-hmm. Or had an injury that came about from a surgery where when you were under anesthesia, when these things happen, especially at a young age, those parts of the brain just remain kind of offline, if you will. Or even at an older age, where you're fully an adult and you go through something you're out hiking and you fell and you banged your head. You know, the things that transpired after that seem kind of out of characteristic. Gosh, going through a real bad time of life, bad things seem to be happening. And what happens is we interpret life differently after a brain injury. So lawsuits, divorces, other issues that problems with the neighbors,
Inability to work.
family, inability to work, confusion, things not making sense, nervousness, feeling irritated, anxious.
Yeah, misperceiving what other people are doing or saying. So where we normally could perceive what's actually going on, we misperceive it as danger, or someone's attacking us, or someone's out to get us, or
Yeah, well, here's the thing with that misperception. It's the damn truth to us.
oh, it's real.
It's real, and it doesn't seem like a misperception. It's like, hey, cuss word, cuss word, cuss word. I'm seeing the truth, and they did this for sure.
Yeah.
So,
and in that state, everything adds up to that for you. Like you feel like you have real proof. Everything that you see, hear, smell, touch, taste reinforces that quote unquote truth for you as well. It's really interesting because what we can sense, what we can take in, what our nose, our ears, our eyes, our skin, the electricity in the field around the body, everything it takes in brings it into the brain, and the brain decides what reality is about it. So an injured brain makes decisions in a way that's a little bit like a short circuit, but to you, it feels 100% real. And this is a case it is when a person's like, why does this always happen to me? Why do I keep having the same issue again and again? Well, the problem is a little short circuit in the brain. The fantastic news is it's repairable plus, plus, plus. We had a woman who was hit in the head by a snowboard, and she was a woman in her 70s, and her life went all kinds of sideways. And then she fell again because, of course, now she's off kilter and dizzy. And she looked like she was going down the road of old age and maybe dementia and maybe all those things. In her case, it took about 8 weeks, maybe a little bit longer, to be not just back to normal, but 110%. Thriving beyond measure, beyond her wildest dreams, thriving, because our system is so great at acknowledging the body where it is and showing it a new way to be rewired. So another thing, the last thing was consciousness. So when you don't have this connectivity, when you're in fight or flight, or when you've had a brain injury, your level of awareness is low. You might live at the level of shame or guilt or anger. You might call it general depression even. And you just feel like you're walking through life unconscious. The things that you want to happen don't happen. It feels like everything bad's happening all at the same time. And you call that a consciousness level. But once the brain is working well, once it's really connected and then hyper connected, your level of awareness, your ability to see reality skyrockets. It just jumps.
Like crazy.
Yeah. Our Cognoscious event does that. It's always in September of every year. It's coming up soon as we're recording this. By the time it's released, it might be over. But if you happen to get it before then, it's in San Diego. Jump on our website and you might be able to catch it. But it's true. We see people's consciousness skyrocket in a very short period of time at that event.
It's that's a very real thing, and there's some really easy to understand scientific reasons for it. everybody knows when you're depressed or down, you look literally down. You physically look down. Everybody knows this when they see somebody who's looking down, that they're kind of depressed, or they feel disconnected. And when we look up, literally what we're doing is we're accessing a completely different part of the brain. This is the looking down accesses the part of the brain that's associated with those other things that we just talked about. Looking up with your eyes puts you more into contact with the prefrontal cortex. And this area has your executive function. It also can downregulate these emotions. So for the people that we're talking about that have brain injuries, oftentimes they're going to have a lot of difficulty looking up and to the side or up in general. And the great news is that there are ways that we can undo that. And when it comes online, it's like as natural as breathing. Like a new perspective comes about. It's like, oh my God, I could just do it this way or that way, or you know what? They weren't bad. I had one recently that was like, you know what? There was a feeling of never being heard, never being listened to. And all of a sudden it was like looking up, it's like, actually, that's not even true at all. I'm totally heard, and people do listen to me. It's like, wait a second, I spent my life, in another direction. These things are going to basically change one's life when the parts of the brain go active.
Well, and I think maybe even a simplification of this is in each of these states that we're talking about, you're literally blind. Literally, there are parts of your vision that you cannot see. Your brain is not seeing certain areas, but you're also blind to the reality that's right in front of you. The good thing you want could literally be in front of you and you cannot see it, right? Mm-hmm. And then blind to possibility. That's that consciousness. When you can see the true good nature of somebody, or the true possibility of what's available on the planet, that's a consciousness level that's elevated. You are able to have more ideas and know how to use them, know how to put it together. It's just about figuring stuff out, like being able to balance your checkbook, or being able to figure out how to apply for a job, or being able to figure out how to communicate with a child. It's those kinds of things that add up to a genius level life. It's not necessarily that you're going to be Leonardo da Vinci, but you certainly can move through life so much easier and so much happier. I'll share one quick story before we go. This weekend, we traveled to Europe this year, and we were gone for a month, and I have a lot of jewelry, that I like to have, and I take it with me. And I have this one set that I absolutely adore. And it's actually just a blown glass set of earrings and pendant. And it's just this most beautiful blue. I just love it. Well, I've had it a long time. Got back from this trip and I just couldn't find the pendant. It seemed it had fallen off the chain. And the earrings, right around a similar time, I hung back up in my earring cabinet, and one fell and seemed to vanish into another dimension, literally vanish. Well, I looked and looked and looked, and my heart was a little bit broken. I was like, oh, I've lost these things. And there was this little push of, guess what, frustration. I've lost them. So last Saturday, I finally gave up and I said, well, okay, I guess they're gone. Maybe I'll find a new favorite set. I just kind of let it all go from my body. No more hoping that I would find it. In that instant, I got a picture in my mind of where it was, and it was in a false bottom in my jewelry box, the pendant. Literally, I knew exactly where it was. I kind of argued with myself. I'm like, it can't be there. How would it get there? Right? It was there. So then I'm like, okay, where's the other one? So I said to my husband, I'm like, hey, I need help solving a little mystery. I think my earring fell into another dimension. So he whips a flashlight out of his pocket and walks into my jewelry box and aims it down 2 levels. And it had fallen behind and hooked on another piece of jewelry. It was hidden until the flashlight was on it. Is that it? There it is. I mean, literally in 5 minutes, they were both back. The minute I thought to ask a different question, the minute I stopped pushing against it, my brain stopped being blind to that thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, you guys, we have run out of time for this episode. We would love you to join us in revolutionizing the new age of genius. Join us at cognomovement.com. And I promise you can get it done very, very quickly. So thanks for being with us this week, Bill.
Thank you.
And we'll see everybody again soon. Until next time, be safe and be well. Thanks for being here with us on the New Life Perspective radio show. For more information or to find out more about the work that Bill and I do, please visit us at cognomovement.com or email us at info@cognomovement.com. See you again soon.